Good evening. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is David Okun, and I'll be speaking about the European Union, the EU. If you have heard of the European Union, is the countries of Europe is coming together to form one super state. And the significance of talking about the European Union, it has to do with many things. But what is in my mind to try and speak about the European Union is to illustrate the incidents involving the cost of living. The cost of living has been a topic I've been discussing from the beginning of this program, which began now coming to 4 months. And I've been talking about different perspectives involving the cost of living or related to how the cost of living came to be as a crisis in Britain, but also in Europe, America, and in the developed world as well as across the globe. European Union is the driver of globalization. And therefore, I spoke previously about globalization in relation to the cost of living. And likewise, I'm now talking about specifically about the European Union because the European Union drives the global economy. And the global economy drives capitalism. Capitalism is responsible for running the global economy and politics. And like I said, under capitalism, discussing it in the other videos, I said clearly that the primary purpose of capitalism is to provide a mechanism for ruling a country in which the ruling class actually amass wealth to provide source of power with which to rule a country. And I also link that with the global economy in which the nation states are actually coming together and bringing together their common powers to rule at a global level. So the ruling class of the world created a family of rulers, and they have done that through different instruments, but at the core of globalization is the European Union. And in the future, even now, all the global satellites, national nation states are congregating to worship the European Union like a god of the capital economic global project, the economic and political global project. That's why the EU is extremely important, and also because Brexit is responsible for the cost of living almost in the same way as the war in Ukraine being the cause of the cost of living. The war in Ukraine affecting the globe is evidence of the impact of globalization. And Europe is at the heart of it, like I said, but also Brexit actually was the product of the European Union when Britain voted in a referendum to leave Europe. And I've said it here, I've said it elsewhere, and I said it here again, that when Britain left Europe, actually it did not, because Britain cannot leave Europe at all. Any country inside the European Union cannot leave Europe. Actually, even if you are in Europe or not, you are actually controlled by the European Union. And Britain being inside cannot leave Europe, and actually it did not leave the EU. Because when the British people voted to leave the EU, the British government did not take the country out of Europe. Instead, he went to negotiate deals with the European Union, and that deal actually cemented Britain's place in Europe. So even if Britain left Europe, actually in substance it did not leave Europe because it cannot in practice leave Europe. And we're going to look at the European Union, and I've said it over and again that every time you are in a situation like the cost of living, the best thing for you is actually to learn about it, learn all the factors to do with the cost of living. And it's an option which is fundamental, in my opinion, for everyone to do. There are other options involving emergencies where people go to get help from the state, and I've spoken briefly about that in the other videos. If you look for the other videos to find them, to watch them, or you can go to, if you're in Britain, you go to the government website to find them and find the help the government is giving. But I will also say of the help given by the government that although the government is giving help, it is actually not giving help. Because number one, the government, if it gives help in Britain and also elsewhere, it makes it also impossible. It makes it deliberately impossible to access this help. And if you work so hard and eventually access help, the level of help is so low that it is not worth the effort of actually trying to get such help unless you are so desperate. Incidentally, a lot of people in Britain are so desperate, and that applies across the globe, especially in the developed world, especially in the Western Europe and in the Western world, including America. The eroding of the welfare state and the welfare capitalism, and also state capitalism, which is actually stronger, leaning toward the establishing of the public sectorial strength, state capitalism and social capitalism, respectively, being eroded now to weaken the provision of public services. And accordingly, with the Conservative Party in the UK and also in Europe and across the globe, conservatism, so to speak, have actually resorted to implementing an extreme version of capitalism. And all these elements tie together, and actually the melting pot is actually the European Union. So in neglecting or actually affirming Europe, you accordingly, actually, if you neglect Europe, you are actually neglecting your life. And if you affirm it, you actually do a study, a detailed study of it, and to actually, it's a survival strategy. You are a human being. You know life. Death and destruction is not your portion. It's not your option. Any sensible human being, it doesn't matter your circumstances. Even if the doctor say you are actually terminally ill, your argument is actually to survive. And the sooner people know that they're on their own, like being in a jungle, to survive, to be strong, you need to learn. You're a student of life. It doesn't matter if you're 80 years, 90 years, or even only 1 year. Everybody is a student. And that's why I'm sharing some of this information to take your life seriously. Doesn't mean you shouldn't take time to play. Take time and play if you need to, but take your life seriously, even if you're a young person, because you're on your own. The government used to help people under state capitalism. The state capitalism is now rejected by the political customers, political rulers, people who run this country, people who run the countries around the world. They have rejected state capitalism. They have rejected social capitalism. What we have now is actually a market capitalism, which is actually an extreme version of capitalism. It rejects public service. It rejects actually taxation. It rejects borrowing for purposes of funding the public sector. That is as simple as that. People need to put that into their head. It is not an accident that there is no funding within the local authorities or within the voluntary sectors coming from the state or coming from other funding charities like the National Lottery or whatever you call them. There is no funding, and it is a political decision. It's an ideological strategy. It has nothing to do with lack of wealth, but it's what people want. So we're going to look at the European Union. Leave a comment below. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to support this channel. And click a notification bell to alert yourself on new videos. I'll be posting many videos as long as I produce them. So there will be videos if you like them. But if you don't like them, sometimes if you think they are valuable, watch them if you have the time. But if you don't, just subscribe and support it in some other way, or let me know what you think. So we're looking at the European Union, and we are looking at the various levels of integration within the European countries, including EU member states. And integration means coming together, like tying partnership together. Is the building of Europe. So there are different languages spoken in Europe, and the European Union has its own flag. It has its own motto in different languages. In Latin, their motto is actually united in diversity, which means diversity means different people. Diversity means different people or different regions, different ideas, different institutions united. So that is unity. So you can talk about United States of Europe if you're interested. They have their own national anthems. So Anthem of Europe is called. That is what they call the Anthem of Europe. So everything a state, a national state, a nation state has, the European Union also have it. So it actually features very prominently on the globe. There are special territories within the EU, European Union. If you call them the EU, it's the same. I mean European Union, EU. And it also shows clearly all the locations of the European Union. There's a capital city of the capital city of the European Union is actually Brussels. That is the institutional seats where the government, the governing instrumentation of Europe sits actually Brussels. Other cities actually Frankfurt, and there's also Luxembourg City. There is also Strasbourg. So the largest metropolis actually is Paris in France. Metropolis is actually the ruling boundaries, jurisdictions. So Paris is one of the jurisdictions, and it is the largest metropolis. So the official languages are actually 24 of them. It's composed of 24 languages. Within the 24 languages, there are actually 3 main official languages: English, French, and German. The European Union also has an official script, official scripts written in Latin, Greek, and Cyrillic. its religion, the main religion practiced in the European Union is actually 71.6% Christianity. This record is actually from 2015, and 42.3% of that sect are actually Catholic, and 11.1% are Protestant. 9.6% are actually Eastern Orthodox, and 5.6% are other Christians, and 24.0% as no religion. They don't believe in anything. So they actually, within the Christianity denomination, actually the majority are Catholicism, significantly Catholicistic in its mapping. Protestant are actually only 11% compared to 45.3%. So Europe is actually a Catholic country in terms of Christianity, and then 1.8% are actually Islam, and 2.6% are actually other forms of religion. There's something called demonyms. Also, we could say European. These are actually nationality. They're called Europeans. So the type of the type of denomination, the type of country is actually continental union. That's actually probably the type of the ruling system, the ruling infrastructure is called continental Europe. Membership, there are 27 member states forming the European Union. So the type of government is actually mixed intergovernmental, directorial, parliamentary confederation. There are keywords: mixed. There is also intergovernmental. Intergovernmental means government between governments. Government actually linking with other governments. So it's like between governments, in rule between governments. So when they talk of directorial, it's actually like a directorate. It's like directing. It's like, I can call it a dictatorship, because if you direct something, it's like you command and people obey. It's like dictatorship. But it's also parliamentary confederation. Parliamentary represent democracy. People vote is actually the opposite of directorial or directorate. So you have a mixture of many things in Europe. So confederation is similar to intergovernmentalism, because federation are actually nation states, are actually constitutional states. They're called federations. If it is confederate, it means actually two governments are actually independently working together to form a state. Like in America, the federal system of government, whether states are actually autonomous or independent of the central authority. But this is actually features showing within the European Union system of governance. So the president of the EU, actually, his name is Charles Michel. So he is the president of the European Council. European Council is one of the political institutions of the European Union. So you have the president of the European Council. You also have the president of the Commission. Commission means government. So Ursula von der Leyen is a lady. Ursula von der Leyen is the president of the Commission. The Commission, in terms of the European Union, is the most powerful government institution in Europe, but in my opinion, it's also in the world the most important, powerful office within the federal Europe. Legislature, which is parliament, actually, European legislature is where they make laws. So the European Parliament and the Council, let me see, and the Council, yeah, the European Parliament and the Council. These are actually both are actually places where they make laws, where they create legislations. So there are two parliaments. The main one is European Parliament, also the Council, and I think it's the Council of Europe, of the European Union. The upper house is called the Council of the European Union, and the lower house is the European Parliament. It's the other way around. So the upper house is actually the one with the most utmost power. Is called the Council of the European Union, otherwise known as the Council. And the lower house or Parliament in Europe actually called European Parliament. And the formation of the European Union is composed of treaties, different treaties. You have the Treaty of Brussels, which is which was actually enacted on the 17th of March 1948. This is the first, and the Treaty of Paris on the 18th of April 1951, and then you have the Treaty of Rome, 1st January 1958, and then you have the Single European Act. These are instruments of the construction of the European Union in terms of the constitution and administration and all the other facets forming the state. In my opinion, the European Union is actually a state. It's a European super state, as they say. So the Single European Act was occurred on the 1st of July 1987, and the Treaty of Maastricht was actually was established on the 1st November 1993. This is quite recent, and the Treaty of Lisbon was on the 1st December 2009, even more latterly. So the total area in terms of size of the European Union is actually 4,233,262 square kilometer, an equivalent of 1,634,472 square kilometer, and this is its land area in measurement, and the water component of its space is actually in percentage 3.08%, and the population of Europe is of 2022 estimate stands at 446,828,803. Density population per square kilometer actually is 106 per square kilometer, and in terms of mileage actually 274.5 per square kilometer. That is the density, is actually the concentration of people in an area. And you have also the GDP, PPP. This is the measurement of wealth, national wealth years of 1922. Estimate the total is 24.049 trillion euros. Euro is actually the currency of the European Union. Per capita income is measured in terms of an individual income in terms of measured in the units of euro, 53,960 euro, and GDP nominal as of 2022 estimate. The total is actually 16.613 trillion euro, and per capita is 37,180 euro. The Guinea is actually 30.0. Medium currency is euro, like I said, and the sign is also there. And time zone is UTC to UTC plus 2, WET, CET, EET. Summertimes, DST, UTC plus 1 to UTC plus 3, WEST, West, I think, CEST, EEST, C also summertime in Europe, and internet, TLDE.eu. That's if you are trying to get something to do with the internet of the European Union. The website is europa.eu. Europa.eu. So EU member states are actually Australia, 80, which joined in 1995, Belgium, BE, which joined in 1958, Bulgaria, BG in 2007, Croatia, CZ actually joined in 2013, and Cyprus, CY. Cyprus joined Europe in 2004, and the Czech Republic, CZ, joined the European Union in 2004. Denmark, DK, 1973. Estonia, EE, 2004. Finland, FI, 1995. France, FR, 1995. That's when they joined Europe. France, FR, actually 1958, and Germany, DE, 1958. Hungary, HU, 2004. Ireland, IE, 1973. Italy, IT, 1958. Latvia, LV, 2004. Lithuania, LT, 2004. Luxembourg, LU, 1958. Malta, MT, 2004. Netherlands, NL, 1958. Poland, PL, 2004. Portugal, PT, 1986. Romania, RO, 2007. Slovakia, SK, 2004. Slovenia, SI, 2004. Spain, ES, 1986. Sweden, SE, 1995. And so these are some of the information you have involving the member states. And you probably notice Britain is missing, because Britain is no longer a member of the European Union. It Brexited. So you have, I think, 27 members. The European Union, EU, is a supernatural political and economic union of 27 member states that are located in Europe. The union has a total area of 4,233,255.3 square kilometer, and equivalents in kilometer, in mile, 1,634,469.0 square mile, and an estimated total population of nearly 447 million. The European EU has often been described as a sui generis political entity without precedent, or combining the characteristics of both a federation and a confederation. I have tried to explain the difference between federation and a confederation. Federation is actually the countries, the nation states actually giving up their sovereignty and joining the European Union as a federal state. Like you find in America, the countries actually owe their allegiance. They give up their sovereignty and they join as federal regions, not country anymore, or maybe as country but without sovereignty. And a country without sovereignty is like a general without his trousers on. It's a naked general. It's just like an empty shell. Confederation is actually when you cooperate with Europe while maintaining your uh, identity, especially sovereignty. Actually, whether or not uh, Britain is a federal state, it depends on whether or not uh, 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 whether or not the EU is a federal state. Depends on whether or not yeah, member state maintains uh, their their sovereignty. So there's a debate as to whether some people say it's a federal state, some people say that it's a confederation and containing 5.8% of the world population. In 2020, the EU generated a nominal gross domestic product GDP of around US dollar 16.6 trillion in 2022, constituting approximately one-sixth of the global nominal GDP and the third biggest global economy after the United States and China. So, in other words, the United States is the biggest economy, followed by China, and the third is actually the European Union. The EU is such an emerging power, and um, rivaling the United States and China, and in my opinion, it is set to actually overtake these two countries. And in my opinion, also the reason why it is compared with countries because the European Union is in all but a country. It's a country which is actually composed of different countries, and for the moment there are semblance of sovereignty within the nation states forming the European Union, but in practice the European Union have grown in such a power, constitutional and administrative, as well as legal power, as to undermine sovereign powers within the confines of the member states, with the result that actually to the extent that you are a member of the European Union, you have actually lost your sovereignty. An argument brought forward by the conservative right wing extremists, and rightly so, then they argued that they wanted to restore national sovereignty to the British country, to the national sovereignty of Britain. And they are accurate in their assessment, and that is the truth. But what wasn't true about their proposition is that there was a political dishonesty associated with the facts. The facts being that sovereignty is actually being taken away from a country like Britain, being a member state within the European Union. But in Britain, involving Brexit and also the memorandum surrounding the crisis, the political crisis of Brexit, it was actually political dishonesty by the Conservative Party, especially the right-wing politician within the Conservative Party in Britain. They were actually trying to practice political opportunism and also a corrupt idea so as to actually provide a proposition that Britain can leave Europe. But in practice, everybody knows Britain cannot leave Europe, like I said before. And so, going back to looking at the European Union, additionally, all EU states but Bulgaria have a very high human development index according to the United Nations Development Program. So it is highly developed. Somehow they talk about Bulgaria, underdog of the family of Europe, the EU. Its cornerstone, the customs union, paved the way to establishing an integral single market based on standardized legal framework and legislation that applies in all member states in those matters and only those matters where the states have agreed to act as one. So it's the question of consent involving member states in as far as frameworks of rule are being created, and there is also in terms of approach a standardization of legal framework. We talk about customs union, and custom union actually, when you talk about customs, you talk about borders, and borders actually is is the substance of providing a conversation of territorialism. And if you, you have a custom integrity, then you have a territory, and if you have a territory, then you have a country. Without your territory, without your custom integrity, it's in border controls, it's in worlds with borders or world without border, which is actually at the heart of the European Union project. And when we talk about its cornerstone, which means it's actually the pillar, the four pillars, like it stands on that, the 4 feet, the central pillars. Without the custom union, there is no European Union. It's actually the foundation of the European Union. It's custom union, and its cornerstone, the custom union, paved the way to establishing an internal single market. Internal single market. We talk about market economy. We talk about capitalism. We talk about privatization. That is what it's about. Europe is actually premised on, in terms of power structure, is premised on the market economic system. And when you talk market-based, a single market, which means one market to serve member states, so to speak, to serve the EU, the European Union, a single market based on standardized legal framework. Standardized means actually harmonization. It means what you find in Britain, you also find in Europe, and along on all the human, all the member states will have something. Their legal system will be similar. There's a standardization. What works in Europe fits also in Britain and all the member states. You have a commonality, you have a similarity. Sometimes you have actually something exactly the same. So what you find in law and its system in the UK, you find in other European members. That's what standardization is. In its common parlance. So when you talk about a legal framework, it is what it is. This is actually the skeleton, the basic structure of law and legislation is in the process of actually setting laws, instrument of rule, instrument of administration, and instrument of governance, so to speak. And only those matters where the states have agreed to act as one. So there are other matters. It's a caveat to standardized framework. There are other matters in which the state would be allowed to. Member state can agree to act as one. EU policies aim to ensure the free movement of people, goods, services, and capital within the internal market, and act legislation in justice and home affairs, and maintain common policies on trade, agriculture, fishery, and regional development. So there you go. You have different elements. People should move freely within the member state, people will move freely. Goods will also move freely, and services will also move freely. Capital will also move freely. If you want to invest in the EU, in you in Britain, if you are a member, you should be allowed without restriction. If you want to buy land, maybe in Europe, you buy as a member. And I think the same corollary or equivalence we have in Africa now with African Union and with East African community. If you are from East Africa, and I think ECOWAS in West Africa, and there are other units in South Africa also. It is actually a global infrastructure centered around Europe, the European Union model, and it is being replicated globally. Um, so people need to be aware of that. So there should be also capital within the internal market, so to speak. We talk about single market of the European Union, so you talk about the internal market of the European Union, and enactment of legislation, like I said, injustice, and injustice means uh, the legal process. You go to courts and all the institution of the justice system and home affairs, which is actually to do with homeland security, and also to maintain common policies on trade. If something is common, it means it's similar or the same. I mean, there's an element of cooperation on matters to do with the trade, agriculture. Agriculture is where food comes from. So food is very important in economic and political system and power brokerage. Agriculture is quite important. Fisheries and regional development. And regional development is fundamental because these actually determine the product, which is actually the effect of political and economic system. And so you see inside the European Union being replicated in a more complex form to form what is actually now the European Union. The passport controls have been abolished for travel within the Schengen area. That's what I say. There's free movement of people, so you don't need a national passport. You probably, if you like, you can have the European Union passport. The Eurozone is a group of composed is a group composed of the 20 EU member states that have fully implemented the economic and monetary union and use of euro currency. And you talk about money, you talk about economy, you talk about euro currency. Through the common foreign and security policy, the Union has developed a role in external relations and defense. So you talk about external relations, foreign affairs, and you talk about defense, as in national security. But this is in with respect to the European Union. So you got the common policy, which is actually an equivalent of foreign policy, as in as of national policy. This is common policy because what you find in Europe in terms of foreign policy, you compare it with what happens in the other member states. So you actually kickstart a process of actually creating a system which is common in all the member states within security policy. Common foreign policy is actually uh, operational within the same or similar infrastructure with the foreign office, and the union has developed a role in external relations and defense. This is actually international relationship and defense as in foreign domestic security. It maintains permanent diplomatic missions throughout the world and represents itself at the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, the G7, and the G8. So you can see that everything happening within the nation states actually happen within the European Union as well. And it has its own, it's like a copy and paste from, but it's big. It's a big and extremely complex infrastructure, a very complex system. And you get yes, it diplomats also and missions throughout the world, and represents itself in the United Nations, the World Trade Organizations, and the G7 and the G20. Due to its global influence, the European Union has been described by some scholars as an emerging superpower. Like I said previously, and I see that happening. An emerging superpower is an understatement because, like I said, underneath the workings of globalization lies the European Union. It's actually at the fulcrum of the global empire being created by globalization. So the Union was established along with its citizenship when the Maastricht Treaty came into force in 1993 and was subsequently incorporated as an international law juridical person, and the person upon entry into force of the Treaty of Lisbon in 2009, but its beginnings may be traced to its earliest predecessors, incorporated primarily by a group of founding states known as the Inner Six: Belgium, France, Italy, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands and West Germany at the start of modern institutionalized European integration in 1948 and onwards, namely to the Western Union, WU 1958, renamed Western European Union, WEU, the International Authority for the Rural AIRA, and the European Coal and Steel Community ESCS, the European Economic Development Community EEC 1993, renamed European Community EC, and the European Atomic Energy Community Euratom, established respectively by the 1948 Treaty of Brussels, the 1948 London Six Power Conference, the 1951 Treaty of Paris, the 1957 Treaty of Rome, and the 1957 Euratom. This is the history, the chronology of the development of what is now. If we look up here, we'll see what is now transpired into the Union. What is referred to as the Union is actually was a progression from different constructing of different instruments, institutions, or so to speak, body. So you talk of the Maastricht Treaty, which is actually um, uh, the melting, the Maastricht Treaty, when the European Union reached a critical point, which coming into force also in 1993, and was subsequently incorporated as an international law juridical person. It has a legal personality, so it has the legal power. It actually operates legal force upon entry into force of the Lisbon Treaty in 2009. So this is actually the lineup, the chronology, how it developed gradually. So there was a gradualistic approach to building what is now the Union, otherwise known as the European Union. So you talk about the Maastricht Treaty in 1993 as a key period when all these other predecessors as incorporated primarily by a group of founding states known as the Inner Six. These founding states, the inner six, are actually Belgium, France, Italy, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, and West Germany. This was at the start of modern institutionalized European integration in 1948. When something is institutionalized, it means the institutions were created, actually power infrastructure, power and administrative, power in law, in rule, and in policy, were all instituted within what is now European integration, which occurred in 1948 and onwards, and the rest um, within the lineup were Western Union and so on and so forth. So it was gradually developed until it climaxed into the Maastricht Treaty. And these increasingly amalgamated bodies, later known collectively as the European communities, have grown since, along with their legal successors, the EU. And the EU is actually a legal power base. It's legalized and it has a legal force as never before seen. Actually, at the heart of EU power is actually the legal entity which actually powers the governance and the law and the policies, as well as all the other facets, both inside through accession of further 21 states, 21 states, as well as in power through acquisition of various policy areas to their remit by virtue of the above mentioned treaties, as well as the numerous other ones, such as the modified Brussels Treaty, and the merger treaty, the single European Act, the Treaty of Amsterdam, and the Treaty of Nice. These are actually legal instrumentation which builds the governing and the territorial, and you name it, the security. All aspects of the European Union are actually structured within law and other attending powers. And this is what we are talking about here. And there has been a merger and acquisitorial kind of approach. The term corporatization within the business equivalent, within the commercial equivalent, within the economic equivalent, bring to mind. So the corporatization of the state of Europe occur when actually other countries join, with their power being transferred from national states into the state of Europe. And in 2012, the EU was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. The argument for the EU was initially based on the idea of peace. Well, peace. If people come together, if people are united, they don't fight. That was their conversation. After the creation by 6 states, 22 other states joined the Union in 1973, and between 1973 and 2013, the United Kingdom became the only member state to leave the EU in 2020, and 10 countries are aspiring or negotiating to join, while Britain leaves, if it has indeed left. Other countries are actually aspiring to join. They are aiming to join. It's like a elite club. You don't join Europe unless you are qualified. You have to be rich. You have to have power. You have to have a special quality. There are countries now wanting to join the European Union. They are not allowed. It's an elite club of rulers, of ruling elites in country and personalities of the ruling clocks. So this is what the European Union is about in terms of a synopsis. This is an overview of what the European Union looked like in terms of law, in terms of constitution, in terms of power, in terms of geography, people, and practices of one sort or another. So thank you for watching this video, and join me again in the following videos as we look into more detail the landscape and also the incidents of the European Union. And this is material I use to guide my conversation, and you can actually look online, and you can go on the government website, you can go almost anywhere, you will find information online on the European Union. Thank you. Subscribe to my channel, and see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye bye.